Today's case is about a double mystery. First, there is the disappearance of a troubled teen. At first, authorities weren't sure exactly why she was missing. But another mystery happened just a few days later that would make this disappearance even more perplexing. First, let's talk about Amanda Gallion. Amanda Gallion was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. Her parents were Dawn and Sissy Gallion. Amanda loved to play violin and sing, especially country music. In the summer of 1997, Amanda's grandmother, whom she called Nanny, died, and of course Amanda was heartbroken. After her passing, the Gallions had a lot of the grandmother's final affairs to take care of concerning her belongings and property in Gillette, Wyoming. Because of that, and since that was Amanda's mother Sissy's hometown, the Gallions decided to move there. Amanda Gallion had just turned 14, and she was not happy with the move to Wyoming. Starting over at such a delicate age and having to make new friends while still grieving her nanny was very difficult for her. Amanda would often write about her feelings and her struggles in her journal. She also started to be rebellious. A few weeks after arriving in Wyoming, she began sneaking out to hang out with friends from her new school. Then on the morning of October 13, 1997, Amanda's father watched her leave to go to school. She would not return. The Gallions had no idea that anything was wrong until 6 p.m. when the school called them and told them that Amanda hadn't shown up for any of her classes that day. Her father went out to search for Amanda, and while doing so, found a cop sitting in his squad car. Don Gallion told him about his missing daughter, so the search for Amanda Gallion was then officially started. The accounts from back then don't really describe how comprehensive of a search there was. I say that because if it is thought to be a runaway, sometimes law enforcement won't do anything more than take a report, especially back then. Given Amanda's rebellious mindset at the time, her running away was a possibility. Police did do some investigating and talk to the crowd that Amanda had been hanging out with at the time. They specifically wanted to talk to a guy named Patrick Ghering, who we will refer to as Pat. Pat Ghering was part of a friend group that Amanda had been hanging out with after she moved to Wyoming. Amanda's parents would say that Pat even asked her father if he could date his daughter. Don Gallion told him absolutely not and not to ask again, but Amanda's mother was quoted in a newspaper article that they couldn't keep the two of them apart. The biggest issue that the Gallions' parents had with the young couple was pretty obvious. Amanda Gallion was 14 and Pat Ghering was 20. Police talked to Amanda's friend Donna Morganflash, and she told them to look for a red pickup truck and to search certain roads and businesses in town. That description turned out to be Pat Ghering's vehicle, and places that she mentioned were places that he would normally go to. Donna admitted to helping Amanda sneak out in the past, but it was uncertain if she helped her on the day of the disappearance. Another important fact that would come out after interviewing Sissy Gallion was that she recalls Amanda leaving for school that day with a big black trash bag slung over her shoulder. They subsequently noticed some personal belongings were now missing from her closet. 3 days after the disappearance, on October 16th, Pat Ghering was brought into the police station to learn what he knew about Amanda's disappearance. It hasn't been released what he said in the interview, but he was thought to be the last person to see Amanda, and he said that it was 7:15 a.m. on the morning that she disappeared. The context of where he saw her and what was said has not been revealed publicly. Police had their suspicions that he may have been harboring the missing teen, but they had no proof, so he was released from questioning. On Sunday, October 19th, another concerned father was driving around looking for his child when he found a red pickup truck on a road behind the Value Via consignment shop in Gillette. It had been abandoned and was facing the wrong side of traffic. As soon as the father found the truck he was looking for, he drove it home and then phoned the police. The concerned father was Raymond Ghering, and what he would tell police would surprise them. His son Pat Ghering was also now missing. There were some possible clues found with Pat Ghering's truck. The driver's seat was pulled up close to the dash, not where Patrick would have had it if he were driving it. There were 3 important things found in the truck. 2 of them were a pair of watches that belonged to Amanda Gallion. One Amanda's nanny had given to her before she passed away, so it had a lot of sentimental value and wasn't thought to be something she would have willingly left behind. The 3rd item was a handwritten letter that's contents have not been released publicly, but it was described by Amanda's mother as the writings of an angsty teenager, new to town and mad at her parents. As far as the group of friends Amanda was hanging out with, they wouldn't say much about their friend's disappearance, and some felt that they were hiding information. Don Gallion would even get so frustrated at their lack of cooperation regarding what happened to his daughter that in one instance he pulled a gun and shot one of the teen's tires in an apparent act of intimidation. Don Gallion was charged for that crime, but the case was soon dropped. Sometime after the disappearance, Amanda's father, Don, reported to the police a series of phone calls to his residence. It wasn't revealed exactly what was said in those calls. He also said that a family friend and a friend of Amanda's from Kansas City told him that they spotted Amanda there after her disappearance. Each of them reported seeing her in a blue car with Wyoming plates. It is unclear exactly when, but the Gallions would eventually move back to Kansas City. In the mid-2000s, a convicted murderer who was an inmate in South Dakota named James Strahl apparently confessed to Amanda's murder and said where her body could be found. Police searched the location and found no trace of her. It was ultimately learned that the inmate who supposedly heard the confession, Aloysius Black Crow, had actually made it up. Apparently, it wasn't the first time that he had done this. Black Crow was ultimately discovered to have fabricated other so-called jailhouse confessions in an effort to reduce his sentence and get an earlier parole date. In one instance, he had even made up that another inmate, David Lycan, had confessed to him that he killed 2 Vermilion girls, Pamela Jackson and Cheryl Miller, in 1971. Black Crow claimed to have the Lycan confession on tape and produced it, but the voice was ultimately determined to be not Lycan, but a different inmate who was in on the deception. David Lycan would even be charged for the kidnapping and murder based on the supposed evidence that Black Crow gave of the confession. When the inmates' lies were discovered, the charges against Lycan were dropped. Interestingly, more than 40 years after the girls' disappearance, and mainly due to a drought, the 2 girls were eventually found in their submerged car not far from where they went missing. Their death was ruled to be an accident. Another person who has been looked at in Amanda's disappearance was Nathaniel Bar Jonah. I'm not going to give him any more time than I have to, but let's just say that he was a horrible, sadistic child killer and even thought to be a cannibal. It is thought that he traveled from his home in Great Falls, Montana to Gillette, Wyoming, 40 miles away, on the same day that Amanda disappeared and returned back to his home that night, but it is unclear exactly why. He would normally target young children, but had assaulted a teenager in the past. If he saw Amanda Gallion out walking, or as some reports say, riding her bike, alone early that morning, he could have targeted her. Pat Ghering's family has never talked to the media that I'm aware of. It is unclear what they believe happened to their son, or if they believe the 2 disappearances, just 6 days apart, were related. Pat's father, Raymond Ghering, would unfortunately pass away in October 2020 at the age of 76. In his obituary, there was a mention of Patrick Ghering, and it said that his son had been missing since his high school graduation. I'm unsure of why it was worded that way, as Patrick was 20 when he disappeared, unless they just wanted to put a vague reference as to how long he had been gone. During my research, I found an interesting comment on a YouTube video about this case. The poster says he is Amanda's brother. I realize that oftentimes you can't trust that the person is who they say, but in this case, I believe it. They had a lot of information from the time before and just after Amanda's disappearance. However, use your own best judgment whether you believe it is him or believe what he says. In the comment, he mentioned another person that I hadn't seen mentioned in any other newspaper article or online source. But his comments don't clear anything up. If anything, it just makes this baffling case even more confusing. He said that Pat Ghering wasn't the boyfriend, he was just the ride. He said that Amanda liked one boy who was one of a set of twins, and they just happened to be friends with Pat. He said that the boy Amanda liked was the same age as her, 14, but that he lived on the other side of town. He also said that his sister Amanda was in trouble constantly for fighting. With her getting in trouble, it meant that she was grounded a lot. He said that when she was home, she would spend most of her time in her room where she would talk to the boy out their third-story window. The way he talked, Pat was there because he was the ride, and perhaps was who drove the boy to her house. He said that the night before she disappeared, she came into his room and took a bag that he assumed was to put her clothes in. She told him the reason that she wanted it was to hold all the letters that her and the 14-year-old boy had passed back and forth. He also talks about how he and his father searched everywhere, and he claims that a cop had actually pulled over Pat and Amanda, but had messed up and let them go. He said that's how they knew that Amanda and Pat were together in the vehicle. It's aggravating to him that Pat is still reported as her boyfriend. He said that he was protective of his sister and wouldn't have let him get close. I'm guessing due to his age, but he doesn't say exactly why. He said that they stayed at the same location with the same phone number for years, hoping that Amanda would contact them or come home. They would follow every tip they were given. They tried everything and eventually, for financial reasons, had to move. He says that he thinks something bad happened to his sister. His personal theory was that she wanted to run away and go back to Missouri to be with her old friends where she was accepted, and perhaps Pat had ill intent or something bad happened to both of them. He said he talked to the boy that she liked after she disappeared and referred to him as a stoner and said that he had no idea what was going on. As far as the reason Amanda's brother chose to comment on the YouTube video was he wanted to thank the person for making it. He sometimes sees negative implications towards his family or his sister, so this video was a nice change. He said it makes him feel good to know that his sister is still in people's thoughts and hearts. Anytime that she is mentioned, it's another chance that someone might know something, and any answer at this point would be nice. He said that the kind words and thoughts are greatly appreciated, and that he loves and misses his little sister every second. As far as my thoughts, this is such an unusual case, and my thoughts will take longer than the actual details of the disappearances. That's unfortunate, but there is just so little actual information out there about this case, so all we can really do is speculate and theorize about what could have happened. I really think that there are things about this case that have not been made public that might help better fill in what happened if they are ever released. Finding the comment from Amanda's brother on YouTube gives us more information that hasn't been released, so that will help in my theorizing. It definitely seems to me that Amanda left because she wanted to. She was unhappy with where she was living, so her brother's opinion that she wanted to go back home makes a lot of sense. As far as her relationship with Pat, I'm still unsure about that. I believe that Amanda could have had a crush on a boy her age, but an older guy with his own vehicle that your parents weren't thrilled with is sometimes a strong pull for a young girl, especially one that was currently going through a rebellious phase. So that makes me undecided whether Pat was just the ride or there was some type of relationship involved. In a newspaper interview, Amanda's mother was quoted as saying that Pat asked her husband if he could date Amanda. So here is a theory that I thought of after reading Amanda's brother's comments. If Amanda and Pat did want to be together, they of course knew that her parents were adamantly against it. She also knew that her older protective brother would not have approved either. Is it possible that Amanda then told her family that she liked a more age-appropriate boy just so she could have the excuse of seeing Pat, since he was the ride and then would have to be around? Perhaps the 14-year-old boy did think that Amanda liked him, or she pretended to be so she could be closer to Pat. Remember, we're talking about a 14-year-old girl who had been through so much recently, and we all know how strong the pull of young love can be. After all, Pat was the one who went missing a few days after Amanda, while the young boy that she supposedly liked had never left. Then we have the 6-day span between these disappearances that honestly just don't make sense to me. The only possible theory I can come up with is that they didn't want people to think that they ran off together. One reason could be possible legal consequences for Pat being with an underage girl. So perhaps Amanda hid out somewhere for a few days? I've always thought that Amanda was perhaps the last one to drive Pat's truck. It contained some of her personal items, and the seat was pulled way up like she would have needed to since she was only 14. Was a plan for Amanda to lay low for a few days and Pat to be seen and even cooperate with police so people wouldn't think that they left together? Perhaps a few days later they arranged to meet somewhere and leave together and abandon his truck to make it seem like something bad happened. It is a little strange that if they did stay together and left the area, that they abandoned the vehicle, but I believe that the truck belonged to Pat's father. If they left in his red truck, the police would have certainly put a "be on the lookout" for it, which would have increased their chances of being found. If discovered together, like I said, Pat could have faced possible charges being with the minor, and Amanda would have been returned to Wyoming, a place where she was very unhappy. Even if they both left willingly, it is baffling that they've never resurfaced. If they would have tried to get in touch with their family years later, they wouldn't have been in any trouble. Could they have started a new life together and are still alive and well out there? I won't say that isn't possible, as it is, and it would be great news. However, oftentimes situations like this don't end well. Is it possible that they did leave together but met with foul play? That is also possible. If the goal was to get to Kansas City, Missouri, that is roughly 800 miles away, and with them not having a vehicle that we know of, they may have resorted to hitchhiking unless they were able to afford bus tickets. Hitchhiking is so dangerous and is made even harder to find answers when your friends and family don't even know that you're doing it or in what area to search. The sightings of Amanda in Kansas City in a blue car with Wyoming license plates holds a lot of weight for me. Could Pat have acquired a blue car locally before they left? That way they could travel with less fear of being caught. Also remember that Kansas City, Missouri was the town that Amanda was from and wanted to go back to. The sightings were said to be from people who actually knew Amanda, so in my opinion, they are very possible. If the sightings are true, then we know that Amanda did make it back to Kansas City. I am curious if in the sightings there was a man matching Pat's description with her. But as with so many things in this case, we just don't know. But in addition to Amanda having lived in Kansas City, so did her family. Is it possible that she could return to her old friends and former places where she hung out, but yet it never gets back to her family that she is there? The only plausible reason I can think of for Amanda to be back there, but no one bothering to tell her family, is perhaps the people there didn't know she was actually missing. There are many cases of runaways who successfully run away and stay gone and somehow start a life of their own, although it is never usually an easy life. Is it possible that they left separately? I mean, it is possible, but if so, it is quite a coincidence. Amanda was unhappy where she was living. She put some of her things in a trash bag and is never seen again, so I think it's very likely that she disappeared willingly. If Pat did leave willingly but not with Amanda, what was his motive? We just know so little about Pat and his home life. We don't know if he had a history of running away. We don't know if there were any problems at home for Pat or previous trouble with the law. We also don't know for sure if he and Amanda were a couple or just friends or had crushes on each other. That is the part that makes it tough to figure out what happened. We could fill an entire podcast with all the things that we don't know in this case. Could something bad have happened to Amanda that involved Pat or that Pat knew about? Or could Amanda have decided to leave on her own? That too is possible. Perhaps once Pat Ghering had his sit-down conversation with the police, everything got real. He could have been afraid that if Amanda never returned, he would somehow get blamed and decided to run away for that reason. Or he could have believed that if Amanda was found and returned, and he knew about her plans to leave, that he didn't share with the police when they asked him, that he would be in trouble. Once we resort to Occam's razor theory, or in a nutshell, the simplest theory is often the likely one. I do believe that Amanda Gallion and Pat Ghering were in a secret relationship or wanted to be in one. I believe this mainly because of what Amanda's mother was quoted as saying in the newspaper interview about them not being able to keep them apart. So that meant that if they really wanted to be together, they couldn't do it where they currently were. Also, Amanda's friend Donna, as soon as she goes missing, tells police to search for Pat's truck and places that he was known to go. Remember, this is the same friend who had been helping Amanda sneak out, so she knew more than anyone what was really happening with the teen in the time before she disappeared. It just seems too much of a coincidence to me that two young people who lived in the same town and spent time together, and also apparently wanted to pursue a romantic relationship, just happened to disappear 6 days apart and never return. Plus, in this case, we have the added threat of charges to Pat being found with an underage girl if they were ever seen together. That's the only thing I can think of why the 6-day span with their disappearances. If the 6-day span of their disappearances were planned, actually it worked. Here we are close to 30 years later, still trying to figure out if the two left to be together or just happened to disappear 6 days apart for different reasons. But my theories aside, the biggest mystery in this case is why haven't they ever resurfaced? I can understand being young and getting caught up in emotions and wanting to return to your hometown. However, I'm sure Amanda loved her family and Pat loved his. It is just baffling to me that they've never resurfaced, either dead or alive, or that they have not come forward to reunite with their family to take this terrible burden from them of not knowing. This case has gotten some attention online, but not a lot. When I first heard about it, I was shocked and surprised that it was not more widely known. Both Amanda and Pat's pictures and profiles are on the missing persons website, but as far as we know, both cases are ice cold. If Pat and Amanda did leave together willingly, did they stay together? If they did, do they have children? Did one or both of them pass away in the 28 years since they've been missing? This case is so unique in the circumstances, and every question we ask makes me think of several more. I do want to say that I don't think Amanda Gallion or Pat Ghering did any of this to hurt anyone. I have sympathy for what they were going through if they did decide to leave their current situations, whether it was separately or together. I'm sure at the time they weren't thinking about what their disappearances would do to their family or of the pain that it would cause them. Whether Amanda Gallion and Pat Ghering left to start a new life together and are still out there or met with foul play long ago, their families are still suffering. The decades of not knowing where your loved one is or if they're dead, and have been for years, have to be so difficult. I can't even imagine. The more attention we can give this case, perhaps someone will come forward with more information, and then we can find them both and finally know whether this double disappearance was a connection or a coincidence. That concludes my podcast on Amanda Gallion and Pat Ghering. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a rating or review where you listen to your podcast. You can find me on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and YouTube Music under one word, Lost and Found Podcast. You can read all of my original articles as well as find links to my most recent podcasts on my website at Lost and Found Blogs. I also have social media pages under that name on Facebook, X, and Instagram. You can reach me via email at lostandfoundpodcast@yahoo. And remember that cold cases stay cold because their story stops getting told.